I'm Nathan Cox, and I represent some organizations called Cop Block. I started the state chapter of Virginia Cop Block. You can find us on virginiacopblock.org. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube. We got a bunch of good videos on YouTube that are educational in the sense that it helps you understand how to interact and how to talk to the police, so to speak. Let me first begin by saying, like Adam mentioned, that I'm a United States Army veteran. I was pretty much politically apathetic before I joined the Army, and specifically before I went to Iraq in 2007 of October. A couple of months after getting into Iraq, a good friend of mine from Texas told me to check out a guy named Ron Paul. And during that time, the presidential election had just got well underway, so that's what I did. I was in Baghdad, I was getting on YouTube, and I was checking out the presidential debates that were going on. I was listening to what Ron Paul had to say in the interviews he was giving with the media, and everything he had to say made a whole lot of sense to me. The man is all about freedom, he's consistent, he's got integrity, and he's honest, and those are characteristics of people that I appreciate. I think it's also important to mention that although I said I was politically apathetic, I did have my issues with the government in two particular places, the police state and taxation. There was actually a point in time after I got out of high school in my early 20s, and like Adam myself, I too am 30 years old, that I was actually trying to become a cop. And I told myself that I wasn't going to be like any other cop. I wasn't going to harass people over non-violent victimless crimes, and I wanted to be one of those good cops who actually made a difference in the community. And that was half the reason why I joined the Army. And nevertheless, after I got to Iraq, I realized I didn't want to become a cop, and I realized the war was a racket and a sham, and I just wanted to get out of there in one piece. So before I explain some of the organizations that I'm involved with, I wanted to share some facts and some statistics with y'all that kind of highlight the police state that we live in. And I have a feeling that Adam and among the rest of the speakers might share a few similarities as well. Number one, there are 2.1 million people caged up in prison or in jail awaiting trial here in the United States of the free. 743 Americans are incarcerated per 100,000, which is the highest in the world. That's number two. Number three, 2/3 of the people in prison and jails are now racial and ethnic minorities. Of these, more than half are African American. Latinos make up slightly over 15% of the inmate population. More than 40% of the prison population are African American, despite African Americans making up only 12% of the American population. The United States has 5% of the world population, but 25% of the world's prison population. Somebody tell me, in the land of the free, how that is not backwards. Number five, the number of violent offenses reported to law enforcement fell 6% in 2010. While crime has been dropping nationally since 2007, this year saw a consistent drop in violent and property crimes in all 4 regions of the country. Number 6, every year an inmate spends in prison costs taxpayers an average of $22,000. As prisoners get older, the maintenance rises, ultimately reaching an average of $69,000 per year. And recently, a professor at Stanford University did a study, and he estimated that the cost of a life term for an average California prisoner is $1.5 million. Number 7, over the past 20 years, most states have adopted measures that make it easier to try juveniles as adults and to sentence youth to adult prisons. And because of that, today, at least 1 in 10 incarcerated youth reside in adult prisons. Number 8, this is a pretty disturbing fact. In 2008 of January, the Justice Department released an estimate of the prevalence of sexual abuse in penitentiaries. The reliance on filed complaints appeared to understate the problem. For 2008, for example, the government had previously tallied 935 confirmed instances of sexual abuse. But after asking around and performing some more calculations, the Justice Department came up with a new number, 216,000. That's 216,000 victims, not instances. These victims are often assaulted multiple times over the course of the year. The Justice Department now seems to be saying that prison rape accounted for the majority of all rapes committed in the United States in 2008, likely making the United States the first country in the history of the world to count more rapes for men than for women. Wow. Number 9. I got one more after this. The rise in the incarceration rate does not reflect the proportionate rise in crime. The fact of the matter is that violent and property crime has dramatically been on the decrease since 1994. And lastly, number 10, the nonviolent offenders make up more than 60% of the prison population and jail population. Of those, nonviolent drug offenders now account for about 1/4 of all inmates, up from less than 10% in 1980. I don't know about you folks, but I, in good conscience, do not believe it is moral to put peaceful people in a cage, especially for possessing a natural plant called cannabis. All right, so like I said, I'm here to represent Cop Block and Virginia Cop Block. Let me briefly explain what the mission and goal of Cop Block is. The following short paragraph is taken right from their website. Cop Block is a decentralized project supported by a diverse group of individuals united by their shared goals of police accountability. We highlight the double standard that some grant to those with badges by pointing to and supporting those harmed, by documenting police actions, whether they are illegal, immoral, or just a waste of time and resources, then putting direct pressure on the individuals responsible, ideally while recording them and then later sharing the video. We can work together to bring about transparency and have a real impact. All right, so let me stress two things right off the bat. That Cop Block, number 1, is a decentralized group of many individuals. The founders of Cop Block, along with myself and other individuals who've started state chapters, do not hate the police. We do not believe it is effective or productive or in the practice of love to behave in such a manner that comes off as hating the police. For example, screaming at them, especially screaming obscenities at them, threatening them, or initiating force against them. In fact, the founders of Cop Block, along with myself and many of the individuals who've started state chapters, do not endorse violence or the initiation of force against any peaceful individual or group of individuals. We are advocates of the non-aggression principle. We advocate peace, love, and non-aggression. We believe that the act of initiating force against another individual should be deemed as intolerable, immoral, and criminal, and nothing, no badge, no law, no statute, and no elected official who is or thinks they are immune to the law is exempt from this fundamental principle of human interaction. Some of you may be asking, what the hell is the non-aggression principle? Well, the non-aggression principle is a moral stance which asserts that aggression is inherently illegitimate. Aggression for the purposes of the non-aggression principle is defined as the initiation of or threatening of violence or force against a person or legitimately owned property of another. All right, enough about philosophy. Whether you agree with or adhere to that principle or not, we're obviously here today because we share mutual interests, and one of those most likely would be police accountability. If you believe it's our duty and our responsibility, not only to ourselves but to future generations, to hold our public servants in check and to hold them accountable for their actions, and to bring transparency to the police departments and the court systems rather than the rampant corruption that we have today, I want to highly recommend you to check out copblock.org. Get involved, utilize the cameras on your cell phones, and film the police during any interaction with them that you may have. Whether it's a traffic stop, whether you're at an airport, a sporting event, or simply walking from point A to point B. Cop Block is always on the constant search for looking for like-minded individuals who want to share their photographs or their videos with your encounters with the police. They're constantly looking for bloggers, writers, call flood callers, and more. To wrap up my brief talk about Cop Block, I want you to remember and write down, if you have to, the following extremely important questions and statements that will become critical to your defense when engaged with the police. Number 1, if you are involuntarily stopped by the police and they begin questioning you, ask them, am I being detained? Combined with, am I free to go? If the answer is no to being detained, or they give you no answer and remain silent, you are free to go. If the answer is yes, question them as to why you are being detained. Number 2, remain silent. You have a Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. Whether the cop is being belligerent with you or buddy-buddy with you, they are trained to get you to incriminate yourself. So do not talk to them. According to the police, we are all suspects. We're all lawbreakers, and they just want to throw people in jail. They're just doing their job, and that they go about their business doing so. And lastly, always, always, always refuse searches. You have the right to say no when police ask you to search your person, your bag, your property, vehicle, or house. Police must have a warrant, your consent, or some sort of probable cause that would give them access to yourself or your property. And the last two, as far as searches and remaining silent, I talk to a lot of people. A lot of people come to me for advice about dealing with the police and how to operate in courts. And 9 times out of 10, the way most people get burned is by incriminating themselves, by talking to the police, and by allowing them to search your person, your car. So remember those things. Quickly moving on to another organization I advocate for, nevertakeaplea.org. But before I explain what this organization is all about, let me pose this question. Can anybody tell me briefly what a victimless crime is? All right, well, a victimless crime is an act that violates an established law with no resulting damage to a person or a property. In such cases, there is usually no victim because the illegal activity was consensually entered into, which is why victimless crimes are often referred to as consensual crimes. I believe that most, if not all, victimless crimes are unconstitutional because they violate our freedom of choice and undermine our individual rights. So just for a few examples of what victimless crimes would be considered as: riding a bicycle or a motorcycle without a helmet, selling raw milk, selling lemonade without a government permit, base jumping, public nudity, prostitution, pornography, gambling, smoking weed. Those are just a few examples of what we call victimless crimes. NeverTakeAplea.org advocates for the removal of victimless crime laws based on the belief that individuals are inherently free and sovereign people. Individuals have the right to participate in any actions that they choose as long as these actions do not infringe on the rights of others. The view is based on the concepts of self-ownership, and the non-aggression principle. NeverTakeAplea.org is a resource for those charged with victimless crimes and activists wanting to support them. The idea behind this initiative is that if enough people, not necessarily a majority, but if enough people stopped prepaying their prepayable traffic violations and insisted on battling out in court, even if the likelihood of being found guilty is still imminent, the idea is to clog the system, to not prepay your traffic tickets and to not take plea deals. Who knows how many people, probably countless amounts, prepay their tickets or go into court and enter a plea deal. Take a second and think about this. If you've ever been into a courtroom, you know they're slam busy, they're backed up with all sorts of cases, and there are always delays and have increasingly harder time trying to manage their dockets because of how many people they coerce into these unpleasant appointments with the state. But imagine if more and more people stopped prepaying those tickets and put their foot down and stopped taking these plea deals and exhausted the state by fighting for their innocence. The court system would be shut down. They'd have to figure something out. They'd have to either stop arresting so many people or stop issuing so many citations to people. So to be clear, the mission behind Never Take a Plea is to unite people in their efforts in battling the state through their court calendar, call floods, courtroom support, and by not pleading guilty, especially before your trial. So go on over to nevertakeaplea.org, get informed, and get involved. I got one more organization I'm going to talk about real quick. I think it's one of the most important ones. It's called the Fully Informed Jury Association. The Fully Informed Jury Association, their mission is to educate Americans regarding their power, their full powers as jurors, including their ability to rely on personal conscience to judge the merit of the law and its application, and to nullify bad law when necessary for justice by finding for the defendant. The Fully Informed Jury Association mission is to inform all Americans about their rights, powers, and responsibilities when serving as trial jurors. Fully Informed Jury Association works to restore the political function of the jury as the final check and balance of our American system of government. Jury nullification is another effective way and essentially our last resort to restore the republic, to salvage and take back our freedoms, and to strike the root of the state. Let me share, in closing, let me share a couple of examples of how all three organizations, well, at least their concepts, how they practically apply. In January of 2010, in Missoula, Montana, a man by the name of Trey Cornell was charged with possession of marijuana. Although he only had 1/16 of an ounce, only 1/16 of an ounce is just a couple of buds, the state felt it necessary to steal the money of and possibly cage Cornell. However, the Missoulian paper reported that more than 24 Montana residents and potential jurors told a judge, one after another, that they would not in fact convict anybody of having a couple buds of pot. In fact, one juror wondered why the county was insisting on wasting time and money to prosecute the case at all. The judge even made a remark saying, "I thought, geez, I don't know if we can seat a jury." Well, in fact, the matter of the fact is he did not seat a jury. He ended up calling a recess, and during that recess, the defense attorney worked out a plea agreement, specifically an Alford plea, which does not admit guilt. So because those jurors used their conscience and said, we're not going to put this peaceful person in jail, he hasn't done anything to anybody, we're not going to find him guilty. And that is how jury nullification works. Using your own brain, using your own common sense, and using your own conscience. Lastly, my final example I want to share has to do with the actual founders of Cop Block, Adamo Freeman and Pete Eyre. They were both arrested on July 4th of 2010 at the Greenfield, Massachusetts County Jail, of all places. They were attempting to bail out a friend, but instead they were arrested for filming inside the lobby as they tried to conduct the transaction. They were arrested on multiple charges, including felony wiretapping. The police located their RV, which happened to be their home, about a mile or less from the jail, and illegally broke in and searched their property. The cops were very familiar with Cop Block and used the wiretapping law, bending it in hopes to find a convention to silence the police accountability movement. Well, not only did they refuse to take a plea deal, but they represented themselves in court, and I highly, highly, highly recommend watching those videos of their trial. They're extremely educational and they're very funny. Not only did they represent themselves in court, but they beat the charges. Primarily, I believe, because of some Fully Informed Jury Association outreach within that community and around the courthouse the day of the trial. As a result, at least one member of the jury used his conscience and decided that what Pete and Adamo had done was in fact not criminal because there was no violation of one's property or rights. To get more information about what happened to them and to see all the videos, check out copblock.org/Greenfield. This last example of all three concepts behind these organizations in practice, take these examples with you, let them resonate and excite you enough that would compel you to spread this information with others and not only talk about it, but act on it. Thank you very much. Come check out my table over there, Cop Block, Fully Informed Jury Assertion. I got literature, free, come check it out.